As it kind of gets to the horizon, and I expect it to just disappear beyond the horizon, it goes from where it is, shoots off above me, and goes north, so south to north, and it covers this whole patch of open sky in like seconds, just gone. And my jaw was on the floor.
Listeners, friends, we did it. We made it to episode 10. Huge thanks this week to Joe Higham and Anthony Brown for their recent praise of the show on socials. You guys truly are the best. Also, thanks to everyone who left a comment or followed along on Spotify. I see all your interaction and it means so much to me. This episode is a really special one for me. During COVID, I became a loyal listener of That UFO podcast, hosted by Andy McGrillen in the UK. This week's storyteller, Dan, is a regular contributor and co-host to that podcast, and I've been a fan of his work for a very long time. These days, he hosts his own show called What It Means to Be Human. It's excellent, so make sure you give it a listen and a follow after this. All links and everything from this episode will be in the show notes, so make sure you take a look. It was an absolute joy getting to sit down and chat with Dan. I noticed on all the content I've consumed of Dan's over time, he has never told his stories. So I asked him if he'd come on Hey That's Weird and share his experiences with us. This week's is a slightly longer episode because I found it so damn tough to cut down any of Dan's gripping stories in the edit. Please enjoy this very special episode of Hey That's Weird. Without further ado, Dan, let's get weird.
My name is Daniel Zetterstrom, and I'm from South Wales in the UK, recently jumped upon to live in Virginia in the USA. You might know me from That UFO podcast, or What It Means to Be Human, or Ancient Aliens. You know, my face has been around, but I was interested in this stuff long before I ever started doing shows about it, because I've had experiences my whole life. When I was a child, and I'm talking, between the ages probably about 4 to 8 or 9, my family lived in a bungalow, and it was, it was generally a nice place, but there was always just a vibe when you were there on your own, One day the vibe turned up a notch, and I walked into the living room at the center of this house to see my dog jumping up in the air as if he was greeting someone, tail wagging. And there was just no one there. All the doors were closed. There was no one else home. It was just me and my dog. And the hairs on my arm went up. And I just kind of backed out of the room and just pretended, nothing happened. Like, he's not doing anything. That's not terrifying at all. So from that point on, I know people say that when you look into the abyss that is the phenomena, it kind of looks back at you. And, people don't tend to just have one thing that happens. It's one thing and then it's just more and it gets weirder. That's exactly what happened here. There was a moment with my sister where we were running through the house and we both just got stuck in a doorway. Like, we were frozen. Our bodies weren't moving. And I remember seeing her face go from calm to just pure panic because it just didn't make sense. We were trying to get past each other. There was plenty of room and we were just stuck. And she freaked out. There was a moment not long after that where we were in her room and cuddly toys were just being moved around her bed. We would look at the bed and they would be in a certain place. We'd look away, look back, and they'd be moved. All this stuff is happening one time, so you couldn't even test it, and say, oh, this happened, so it's just going to keep happening. I had pens thrown at me. The cherry on the cake here, for me, when I look back at that time, is that both my sister and I had an imaginary friend who we drew pictures of. And my sister and I didn't share a room. We didn't really talk about weird stuff. It freaked her out. We drew pictures, and my mum gave them to me a few years back, and they're exactly the same picture. And that we never spoke about our friends, how they looked, anything like that. These were our secret imaginary friends. And they looked the same. And they would always come at night and take us on adventures. I don't know how to grapple with that, because I'm sure there are some people listening to this who'd go, dude, you were abducted. And I'm just like, I'm not saying that. I don't know. I can't remember being taken in a forceful way or anything like that. All I know is we had an imaginary friend and it looked the same, and we'd be taken on adventures at night. The imaginary friend looked pretty much like the goblins from the Hopkinsville UFO case. Big pointy ears, big heads, big bulbous eyes, tiny little bodies. I recently got to meet the daughter of one of the people who was present at the Hopkinsville Goblin encounter, and I showed her the picture that I'd drawn as a kid to ask her the question about it, and immediately she recoiled because she recognized it, and she told me so afterwards. She said, I nope, don't like looking at that at all after the stories my dad told me. What's funny about how my life went is that I'm now doing shows about UFOs and stuff like that after trying to find all these different careers in different areas of work. And it turns out I should have just listened to the child who loved doing the X-Files and just wanted to talk about UFOs all the time. I was given the ET of the Class award upon leaving high school in the UK because I just spoke about it so much, apparently. It wasn't long after this that I had what I would deem my first UFO sighting. And I was laying on the hood of my friend's car. I think I was about 14 at this time, just looking up at the clouds. And, it was a cold night, so everything was just sharp and crisp. And the clouds were real fluffy, and they were just kind of drifting through the sky. But you could kind of see between them. And as we were looking up, we saw a light hop from one cloud to another. And my friend sat up, shocked, and said, "Did you see that?" As I said yes, and also sat up, the light went back across to the other cloud. And that was the end of the sighting. We never saw it again. It never came out of the clouds. This wasn't a star, and, I know full well that the eyes can kind of trick you and the movement of the clouds can trick you. But this wasn't that. It moved very fast between the clouds, a lot faster than the clouds were moving. There was something up there, and we didn't know what it was. And so that was my first UFO sighting. When COVID happened, I was part of what's known as UFO Twitter, I guess. In hindsight, none of us thought we were making anything like that. We were just talking about UFOs on Twitter. And then it got its own hashtag, and it grew like crazy. But doing that led me to meet Andy. And during COVID, we would call each other and just have these long chats about UFOs and everything going on. And eventually it got to a point where he said, "Hey, why don't you just come onto a show and we'll have a chat and see how it goes." And, the rest is history, I guess. We're here now, still going 4 years later. Really weirdly successful podcast, and still pinch myself I even get to do it, because we're just talking in a room about UFOs like we always had done. We're diving into things heavily, and I come across again Stephen Greer, and came across his contact protocols, CE5 as he calls it, or human initiated contact. But he's kind of branded it, and he has a bunch of tones that you're meant to play when you're kind of trying to summon UFOs in the sky. He says that you have to set the intention well before you do it. And this is really intriguing to me, because I know full well what people say about Stephen Greer and the reputation he has. But at the same time, I also know people see weird stuff in the sky. And so have I. And it's not the craziest thing that would happen, So I thought best way to see if it works is to do it, to try it. And so I start doing it. And I go out, I would say, every night from about 10 p.m. till about 4 a.m. And I just lay in a deck chair, headphones on, listening to music, and I just stare at the sky. This one night, I'm laying there, and I ask for something to happen, having done the intention setting. And when I ask this, I look into the sky, and right where I'm looking in the sky, this light just starts moving. And I was looking right near the horizon, so I just think it's come over the horizon. I've just seen it, So it goes up, and I'm like, it's probably a satellite. But regardless, as it's going through the sky, I say, I'd like something else crazy, because it's still a coincidence that this thing appeared when I was looking at the horizon. So, and at this point, I'm kind of willfully going along with whatever happens, right? Instead of just judging everything that kind of comes to mind. So I say, show me something else crazy. And the light stops. in the sky, like right at the highest point above me. It just stops. So I start counting, and I'm like, is it moving? Like, I'm putting my thumb up to kind of see if it's moving at all, and it's just a trick of the eye. And nope, it's not moving, it's just stopped. So I just say, thank you, that good old Chris Bledsoe style, thank you, Lord, but, not religious. And as soon as I say that, the way I describe it is it fell from where it was to the horizon like a leaf on wind. It just drifted down in this kind of pendulum motion. And it was just swinging wildly, just drifting down. As it kind of gets to the horizon, and I expect it to just disappear beyond the horizon, it goes from where it is, shoots off above me, and goes north, so south to north, and it covers this whole patch of open sky in like seconds, just gone. And my jaw was on the floor. It really like stirred something in me, because it's one of those encounters that you can't disprove. I don't have a photo or a video of that. I've just got my memory of it, the experience I had in the moment. And someone like McQuest would tell me that was probably prosaic and your eyes are tricking you. And it was right there in that moment where I realized how people talk to experiences and how debunkers can be really condescending, sometimes without even knowing it, right? And it's really just damaging, because I experienced that. And there is nothing that humanity makes that moves like that. And I got to a point where it was happening so kind of like frequently that it kind of freaked me out. And I started thinking of the lights in the sky like the lights on a lanternfish. The fish at the bottom of the ocean that kind of have the light and it attracts their prey. And then the big teeth come in when they're distracted by the light and chomp. And so, yeah, I just got this weird feeling. Not to say that I sensed that they were going to be bad or malicious or anything. I thought, you know what? I don't know what I'm playing with here. So at this point, I'm deep into this. I get invited to Colombia to film a UFO documentary where there were these lights on a mountain. The mountain's called La Peña de Huayca, and these things are called dancing lights because they look like they're dancing. They've been seen for thousands of years, never documented. The town below, this mountain, Tabio, they have festivals kind of based around the spirit of the mountain, Chia. Just opposite Chia, on the other side of the valley, is a peak called Mohoy, which is like the male equivalent. Mohoy is like the male god to Chia's female god. So we go there for 2 weeks, and our goal is to talk to as many people as we can, see the town, and hopefully see these lights on the mountain and maybe film them. When we're there, pretty much everyone has a UFO story. It's not like in the UK or, where I've been in the US, where people just don't really talk about it. You're weird if you talk about this stuff. So every night we're watching this mountain and we just don't see anything. And then it comes time for the team to start going home. And when half the team has left, the mountain starts lighting up. And in that moment, I couldn't help but think about the phenomena as a trickster, as it's called, to think that, we'd been there for 2 weeks in apparently the most active time for these lights, and they just didn't perform for us. But when everyone started going home, it started putting on a show, and it was just so frustrating, but also you had to laugh at it. And we ended up filming the first footage in history of these lights on the mountain. It's crazy because we went up the mountain and there's no path up there. You've got to walk up a dry riverbed, and it's only dry if it's not raining. It's high up in the Andes, so it's usually wet. You have to have a police escort to get up there anyway, because the road's all the way up to this riverbed that you can walk up, lined with cartel, basically. It's where the cartel lives. So you have to have a police escort, otherwise you'll get mugged and, just left with no belongings and stuff. So, yeah, we went up there, and just to experience how easy it was to get up there, could someone be playing a trick or anything like that? So we kind of mapped the mountain, had an idea of what was there, basically at the top, you kind of have the ritual space, and then there's a sheer drop off the side of the mountain. And it's where, way back when the Spanish came and conquered the Americas, this is where they made the Mohoy tribe jump off if they weren't willing to give them their riches. So it was a really gut-wrenching place to be for that reason anyway. to know such pain had been caused there, but also really intriguing because some people called them ancestor lights and said there was the spirits of the Mohoy that were coming and in this other form. And so when we filmed them, it was amazing, not just because we got the footage, but because the lights in the video are halfway down the sheer drop of the cliff. So if it's someone with a torch, they would have had to bring up abseiling equipment and they'd be hanging off the side of this cliff in the dead of night, just shining a torch just perfectly so that where we were in the valley, we would see it really bright. And the light from the ball of light didn't cast any illumination on the face of the cliff either, even though it was right in front of it. Which is just weird because light isn't meant to do that, right? Just to be clear, like I'm not saying this is UFO, this could be ball lightning, but science is mystified by ball lightning. They can't reproduce it for more than like a few seconds in a lab setting. And so if right here on this mountain where we're filming these things, there is a example in nature consistently that can be studied of an energy source that humanity can use to get out of its current woes, like that's kind of big, right? Like we don't even have to go to UFOs. The strange thing was on the day that it happened, there was a feeling in the air. The air felt electric, even though the weather was just clear, but it felt like there was a charge in the air. And then that night they appear. So we wondered if maybe it was to do with the environment, you know, kind of geological factors. And we found that there was a river that ran between the two peaks. So we thought, well, maybe it's kind of creating a kind of natural battery. Then we kind of started digging in further, and I found that where the lights were appearing were in a positive electromagnetic anomaly, and the other peak was in a negative anomaly. So there's all this stuff going on that kind of, you know, that's present in UFO lore for so many sightings that, you know, it seems almost like they're window areas that are easier to come through or to utilize in the way that they're using. But at the same time, you know, that could be what feeds this natural awesome phenomena we could use for energy gains. We did that. That was incredible. Off the back of that, I got invited to Scotland to visit Boleskine House. For those that don't know, many people know it as the Dark Magician's house that was owned by Jimmy Page from Led Zeppelin. But it was where Aleister Crowley went to perform something called the Abra Melin ritual. The idea behind this ritual is that you have to build a room that's pointed in a certain direction. It's got to have 3 windows so that certain constellations can come in these windows. And this ritual, it lasts about, I think it was 24 months. It's quite a heavy ritual, and it's kind of seen as his big event ritual throughout his life. And I got to go there, film a documentary because they're rebuilding it. And while I was there, I asked the owners if I could meditate for a while in the room on my own, and I got to do so pretty much at midnight for a long while. The purpose of the ritual that Crowley performed here is to kind of, you summon all of the demons of hell, whether that's figurative or literal, it's up to you. But the idea is that it gets you into a space where you're thinking about, you know, greed, lust, fear, all of these negative things. And then at the end of these trials, when you vanquish them all, you get to meet your higher self, kind of your guardian angel, and ask it something. That was the idea. And it would kind of turn your life inside out and transform you. And so at that time, I kind of did that. You know, I did a shortcut, obviously. I wasn't there for 24 months, but I kind of just invited the energy in the room to come to me and transform my life, and let's see where it goes. And so I invited change. And within days, weeks, I'd lost my job. I'd given my notice in on my flat. Someone had surprised me with a little money that I used then to go traveling. And I thought, wow, this kind of came all as I invited this change. What else is possible? Let's go for it. I went to Spotify and I hit shuffle, and Mexico by Incubus came on, and I was like, okay, I'm going to Mexico. I decided to basically just travel in Mexico for as long as I could, which ended up being 3 months. And I just followed the number 33. I decided this before I even went. And in New York, which was my first stop, I ended up talking to someone getting off the plane who, for some reason, they just told me up front, like,
hey, my lucky number's 33.
And I was like, okay, game on. You know, like whatever's going on, 33 just came to me really kind of quickly. So I'm just going to keep following this. So I spent Christmas Day at the Teotihuacan ruins in Mexico. which was crazy. It was my first Christmas. Being from the UK and just it's cold and miserable, if not snowing at Christmas. Having sunshine at Christmas was wild to me. And so I just followed this trail all through Mexico and even going to the bus station and just looking for the bus that was 33 and going to that place. And I just kind of kept doing that. All through this time, I'm kind of working towards getting to Colombia to do the second season of the show and talking to the people who are going to be a part of that. As I was traveling, I found this musician called Hayden Kalnin, who I absolutely adored his music. And the song that kind of really got me was a song called What It Means to Be Human. And it was just the soundtrack of my traveling. So then about halfway through my travels, I find out that Hayden, in fact, is coming to Colombia. And I was like, what are the chances of that happening? Just random new music that I find, following synchronicities, and then suddenly he's there in Colombia. And Hayden turned out to be such a wonderful guy, and he's done some music for my show now. And again, I pinch myself because the synchronicity led me to him, and now he's doing music for my show, and he's inspiring me in a new way. And he's seeing what I'm doing and going, oh, I've made a new track for you. So it's inspiring him, and it's just like this Ouroboros of awesome creative energy. So this time in Colombia, we're trying to kind of disprove ourselves, right? We're kind of saying, okay, it's not UFOs. It is prosaic. We just don't know what it is. We buy the brightest torch we can find off Amazon, which was like 20,000 lumens. It was something crazy. And we schlep it up the mountain again with the police escort again. And they were really funny because they would tell you UFO stories as you were walking up.
Sí, aquí es donde lo vi volando. Parecía un huevo.
And just so casually, cops just, yeah, I got a UFO story, I'll tell you. There was a Tic Tac flying around the mountain, and you're just like, okay, what do I do with that? Just so different to what we're used to, right? Most cops wouldn't tell you those kind of stories, or they'd be really wary about it because of the effect it could have on their career, but it was so matter of fact to all these people that lived here. And so, yeah, we took the torch up the mountain, took footage of it, and it looks nothing like it. The light we filmed in the first season, it looked like a ball. It had blue to one side of it and red to the other side of it, which is suggestive of something called redshift, which takes massive gravitational pull. Why the hell is a light on a mountain doing that? I don't know. It also split into 3 at one point and changed color at one point. It flashes red and kind of makes a triangle, and it spits what I call a kind of dragon tail. That's what the locals call the dancing part of the dancing lights. Whereas the torch was just static and really bright, and that was about it. I mean, what do you do next, right? Like, we don't know what to do next. We've proved that it's not a stupidly bright torch, and it's not just randos kind of going up there. There is kind of something here. And so there's a mystery there to be solved. And right there in that place, I end up meeting my now wife, Elena, who is also into all these weird synchronicities and things like that. And just before we met, she was in Egypt, and she flew to Colombia from Egypt, which is where we met. After I'd been kind of seeing the ruins of Mexico, she was seeing the ruins in another part of the world. And it became just very, very serendipitous and really cool as well, because now when we look back, we essentially have the documentary stands as a really professionally produced story of us meeting and growing closer. And you can see it in the show, and it's cute, may not be cute for anyone else, but we enjoy it. It's really cool for that to happen. I go back to the UK and end up kind of being pulled back out to the US, where Elena and I travel coast to coast. We stop off basically at all of the UFO destinations, Betty and Barney Hills kind of sighting spot, where the Lubbock lights happened, all that kind of stuff. And it was really cool on this trip. I got to speak at Roswell as well, which, I kind of wanted a time machine to go back in time to tell younger me, who was picked on in school for being the ET kid, it gets better. It works out, Yeah, we leave Roswell. We go to California to meet Sean Cahill. And then the plan is to go on to Catalina and then up to Wyoming to stay with Lou Elizondo. We eventually get to Skinwalker Ranch. We find this little spot north of Skinwalker. it's basically like flat, and you can just look south and you can see the ranch and all the lights on the ranch, and it's kind of up on the mesa and a bit north. So we're like, yeah, we can go here and we're not going to trip security. There's no barriers that we have to go past or anything like that. Of course, before we do that, we go up to the famous gate of Skinwalker Ranch, and, you know, I put a Skinwalker sticker there and we take some photos. So we're up on the mesa, and as soon as we get out the car, I set up my camera on the tripod and I take a photo. And the camera completely still on the tripod. And when you look at the photo, if you imagine a long exposure where you move, you know, you get those light streaks. That's happened, but it's only happened to maybe like 3 lights in the picture. It hasn't happened to all of them, and it's only the lights coming from the ranch. So I take another picture. This one comes out fine. It's perfect. Completely clear. Don't know what's happening. So just for the sake of trying to reproduce it, I take another picture and I knock the tripod, you know, accidentally, or trying to fake it kind of accidentally to say like, oh, you know, did I nudge it? And that's what's happened. And so the picture that's produced is one that would be expected within a long exposure, which is just all the lights are like smudged across the image and it's nonsense. And so I have no explanation for why that original photo came out the way it did. And so just a whole bunch of weirdness at Skinwalker Ranch, where you're told that weirdness always happens. Post all that, there are so many moments where I'll turn around and I'll see someone walking past, and I'll say to Elena, "Hey, is that you?" And she will answer from behind me, just kind of say like,
"No, I'm over here. Why, is there someone here?"
And I'll just be like, "There was a white shoe and they had pink laces and it was just a person there, but there's no one there." Like, I'm so acclimatized to this weirdness now that I don't even bat an eye. At most, I'll do the thing that the dog in Up does, where, you know, he looks and goes squirrel. Like, if I see something, I'll kind of look, and sometimes I don't say anything, and it really freaks Elena out. So yeah, now I'm just kind of living with this weirdness that I feel like I'd semi-invited into my life, just kind of amping up and really bedding in there. And I'm just kind of exploring this road as it comes to me, I guess. And it's really nice to have my own show now where I can kind of explore some of these things a bit more widely as I experience them, and hopefully capture some on camera and share them. It would be nice to get proof, but for me, from my experiences, I know that we're not alone on this planet. There's something else here. And I'm not saying it's aliens, I'm not saying it's ghosts, I'm just saying there's another presence amongst us that we do not understand. And the sooner we start getting to it, the sooner people like me can stop feeling like they're going crazy.
I had so many questions for Dan, but I had already kept him way longer than I said I would. Either way, I had to get at least a couple in. Firstly, I asked Dan which UFO case in history meant the most to him, and why. Here's what he had to say.
The Calvin case, I think. There are some incredible ones that I almost chose, like the Ariel School one. There was a school landing in Broadhaven in Wales as well, that have some interesting implications about children and who they grow up to be and what they can do in the world that's connected. But the Calvin case for me, it's about something weird that, you know, just a bunch of hikers saw in the sky in Scotland. But I think it's also so important because that leaked out because of, you know, something very human. Nick Pope wrote about it in his book about the poster, the picture on the wall of his office and how it went missing. And people were captivated by it. You know, if only we could get that photo. But it was 20, 30 years ago, you know, we're never going to find it. And then along comes this guy, David Clark, who is my favorite skeptic because he's so balanced, but he understands the subtlety of, you know, folklore, but the truths that folklore hold when you kind of really examine the data behind them. Through just sheer perseverance and tenacity, you know, he went to Calvin, he put up posters, he basically spoke to every single person that he could. And he ended up finding someone who had taken a copy of one of the photos in the 90s and just kept it in a book and didn't even realize that he had it. And then when he realized he had it, he didn't even know who he should give it to. So there's this famous UFO photo sat for decades in this dude's bookshelf that everyone's chomping at the bit for, but no one's going to get. And then we get to, David's investigation, and he gets the photo and he gets more of the story out. And that's become such a big case now because of the work that David did on it. But it's a testament to not giving up looking for data and looking for the evidence. And also, I would say, a testament to the fact that even when you find the photo, there's still more questions.
As I noted in an earlier episode, I think the UFO topic has become a disinformation minefield, with people looking to profit on the topic as much as possible, rather than get any actual information out there. I asked Dan who he thought was worth paying attention to these days, and who wasn't going to waste everyone's time and trust. Here's what he said.
I think the most important kind of person leading the charge in the community these days is someone like Matthew Brown, who seems to be a genuine whistleblower. There's genuine fear for his life and worry, yet he's communicating and he's trying to tell us all things. But at the same time, he's showing that he has these esoteric interests. And it's a nice reminder that everyone's just human. Even if you're a UFO legacy program whistleblower, you're still gonna, like football or hate Taylor Swift, or no, love Taylor Swift. Sorry, you can put Taylor Swift in your tags now. But we're all flawed, is the point I think I'm trying to make. And Matthew Brown is the most human person to kind of come forward for me, in the sense that, we can relate to him very easily, just talks about home life, stuff like that. Whereas, someone like David Grush, as incredible as his testimony is, same with, Lou Elizondo and stuff like that, incredible testimony, but they've clearly had a life where they're dedicated to the military, and your mileage is going to vary with how much you can relate to that. So just an IT guy, working contracts for the government, stumbling across all this stuff, I think that's kind of the carrot that we should follow as a community, and, listen to Matthew. And he's pointing in directions, and he's naming companies like Palantir and stuff like that. This is where we should be looking if we want to get progress at the moment, I think.
Finally, Dan has his own show, and it's really, really good. Here's how you can find it.
People can catch me on my show, What It Means to Be Human. Just look for To Be Human Show on, YouTube, all the socials, everything like that. And we try and have really interesting conversations about the phenomena, but from a different angle, which is how it holds a mirror up to us and makes us wonder who we are. And as we're stepping foot into the universe, what values are we holding as we encounter other species? Do we want to be kind, or do we want to just be war obsessed? I think these things are really interesting questions. And so, we get a little kind of philosophical at times, like this subject tends to push people into. And I'm not afraid to talk to people where I don't mention the words UFO at all, but it will always be phenomena adjacent. So there'll always be something that you can take from it.
Firstly, I really can't thank Dan enough for spending the time with me to tell his stories. He single-handedly rejuvenated the topic in my brain, and I think he is truly one of the best ambassadors out there for the UFO UAP topic. Secondly, it's nearly time for the greatest day of the year, Halloween. I'm proud to announce that Hey That's Weird podcast will release 2 extended-length episodes on October 30th and October 31st. These episodes will be made up of shorter stories submitted by you, the listeners. After that, Hey That's Weird will return to regular episodes every 2 to 3 weeks. If you have a story or multiple stories, short or long, that you're feeling vulnerable enough to share, then get in touch via the Instagram at Hey That's Weird Podcast, or via email at heythat'sweirdpodcast@gmail.com. Thank you so much if you've listened this far, and until next time, stay weird.